And we'll start with the start of the week, and Tom Brady has been a miserable fantasy quarterback, averaging just over 17 fantasy points per game on the season. Only one game with multiple touchdowns, only 2 games with over 20 fantasy points, but here comes number 3 against the Seahawks in Munich. He loves playing in international games. He's thrown for over 950 yards in 3 games internationally, over 300 yards in each of those games. He has 3 touchdowns in each of those 3 international games. So this is no surprise for him to not be playing in the country. And now he's taking on a Seahawks defense that's allowed over 22 fantasy points 2 of the last 3 games. He's been 7 games in a row with at least 40 pass attempts. 3 of those games he's been over 300 passing yards. So he's just missing that second touchdown. And you know what? He's going to get it against Seattle in this game. This is going to be the breakout game for Tom Brady to start the stretch run. Right after their bye week, he's going to lead a lot of fantasy managers to championships. He's going to help you win in week number 10. Dave, why is he not higher for you?
Because I'm worried about what we've seen from Brady over the last 5 weeks where he doesn't have that second touchdown. And last week we can't say, well, there was a ref call that brought a touchdown back or a drop pass where it didn't happen. Last week it was the offense could not move the chains enough to get into the red zone, but it was against a better defense. I still like him. I still think he's going to get you 20 to 22 fantasy points, but I am a little bit worried about him against the Seattle defense, which is still very underrated. They've played great football, and covering Tampa Bay's offense, it's getting easier. Godwin isn't as explosive. Mike Evans is still the top dog, but other elements in this offense, I think that Brady just getting rid of the ball quicker just makes it a little bit worse, so I'm a little less confident than you are.
You just can't keep throwing the ball this much and producing this many yards and scoring this few touchdowns. At some point, maybe it won't happen this week, but it's got to happen. I'm just going to keep betting on it week after week after week. My Scott Fishbowl team has Tom Brady, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans. It's a must-win week. Let's go start of the week.
Well, I think it's going to be a touchdown for Godwin because the targets have still been there for him, 10-plus targets in 4 straight games. And this is going to be an opportunity, I think, where you see Brady go back to working inside out. And so the outside cornerbacks for Seattle have been very good. Tariq Woolen having a fantastic rookie season, which is why I have Godwin as one of my starts for this week. I think you can buy into, hopefully, him finding the end zone. So I'm excited about Chris Godwin back, as for me at least, as a top 15 wide receiver for this week. I'm starting him along with Geno Smith, Jeff Wilson, Josh Palmer, and Pat Freiermuth, like these guys as starting options for this week. So again, Godwin should find the end zone. Now, Jeff Wilson clearly is somebody that you have to buy into, as can he outperform Raheem Mostert? I think both running backs are at least flex options this week. Cleveland's run defense has been absolutely abysmal, and you saw Wilson outperform Raheem Mostert last week. So I would still start Mostert over Wilson if you have to make the choice of the two. But if you're able to pick up Jeff Wilson separate from Raheem Mostert, I think it's a good opportunity for him to at least deliver as a flex, knowing what the running back situation looks like this week. And then for Pat Freiermuth, taking on a Saints defense that has been absolutely fantastic against opposing tight ends. They did give up a touchdown last week to Isaiah Likely, first touchdown that they've allowed to tight ends so far this season. But Freiermuth, you heard the reports coming out of Pittsburgh. The targets that are vacated by Chase Claypool, playing in the slot a little bit more, that's going to go to Freiermuth. I like what I've seen from him. I think the Steelers' passing game is going to start to take off, like them this week against the Saints. I think Freiermuth might be their best option, knowing where Kenny Pickett's going to look. So I like him as you see here, top 5 tight end. I think consensus-wise, we're all in agreement that Pat Freiermuth should play well. All right, Heath, let's take a look at your starts for this week. You got Jimmy Garoppolo at the quarterback position, DeAndre Swift and Gibson at the running back spots, Lazard at receiver, and Dulcich at tight end. Let's talk about Jimmy G here because a lot of fantasy managers picked him up this week, coming off his bye. How good can he be?
I think he could be a top 10 quarterback. He could maybe sneak into the top 5 with all these injuries and some of the poor play from guys recently. I love the fact that he's got multiple touchdowns in 4 straight games. His efficiency this year has been fantastic. Over 8 yards per pass attempt, better than 5% touchdown rate. And this Chargers defense is better against the pass than they are against the run, but they haven't been a top 5 unit against quarterbacks this year. I still think he gets multiple touchdowns once again.
I think the question when it comes to the 49ers against this defense, really everybody against this defense, you're going to throw, you're going to run. And so you're anticipating them throwing enough.
Right, yeah, he's at 31.5 pass attempts per game. I think he'll be right around 30, and 30's been plenty to get him 250 yards and 2 touchdowns this year.
Let's talk about DeAndre Swift because a lot of fantasy managers are frustrated, understandably so. I'm sure the Lions are frustrated that he hasn't stayed healthy. So this is going to be a big Swift game, and would you start Swift over Jamal Williams?
I would not start Swift over Jamal Williams. They are both top 20 running backs for me. This is a fantastic matchup against a bad Bears run defense. It's going to be even worse than they've been early in the year because of the loss of Roquan Smith. And we've kind of gotten a little tell from Dan Campbell the last couple of weeks. He had 5 carries in Week 8 against Miami. He said, maybe I gave him 1 too many. He only had 2 carries the following week. This week, Campbell talking a little bit more optimistically about Swift, hope he can get more involved in the offense. Would not be surprised if he sees 10 to 12 touches in this game. That's enough for a player as good as him against a defense as bad as this one.
Dave, what's your concern?
Because what if he doesn't do well on those touches? What if he doesn't even get 10 touches? What if he doesn't find the end zone? He was close to scoring last week. And I watched how he looked. He looks pretty good. So I'm just worried about the volume and the workload there. And I know that when they get near the goal line, it's not going to be DeAndre Swift. It's going to be Jamal Williams. He's a flex for me.
Okay, understandably so. I think that's kind of the tough call a lot of fantasy managers have to make when it comes to DeAndre Swift. But we're all in agreement. Jamal Williams over Swift if you were handcuffing the two. And then in terms of Greg Dulcich, is this going to be a big game for him or just kind of where he's been living, which has been pretty good for fantasy managers, right around that 10-11 PPR point range?
Where he's been living is a top 5 tight end on a per game basis, and I think he's going to be that for the rest of the season. What we saw in the second half against Jacksonville in their last game was that Russell Wilson got going when he started targeting Greg Dulcich. He does not have a game yet this year with fewer than double-digit fantasy points. He's going to keep that streak alive against the Titans.
You saw Antonio Gibson on Heath's list. We'll talk about him coming up. Dave's not so fond of Gibson, so when we get to the sits, we'll have a very good Antonio Gibson conversation. Dave, for you, your starts, you got Jared Goff at quarterback, Khalil Herbert in that same game at running back, Kareem Hunt also at the running back position, Darnell Mooney, and Brandon Ayuk. So you're going to have your eyes on the Bears and Lions quite a bit here. Let's talk about Jared Goff because I think some fantasy managers picked him up this week with the hope of maybe getting some quality production, but are you starting him over some prominent guys for this week?
I am. For example, I'll start him over Brady because I think he's got some super high upside. Since Robert Quinn was traded, Chicago's allowed at least 29 fantasy points to a quarterback in each of the past 2. They're not getting much pressure on the quarterback. 20 or more fantasy points to a quarterback in 5 of the past 8 for Chicago. And when Goff's not pressured, he's great. Almost a 70% completion rate, almost 8 yards per pass attempt, a 5.6% touchdown rate. Is that good?
That's pretty good.
5.6% is good, and a quarterback rating of 104.3. All 3 of his touchdowns in the past 2 games have come when he's not pressured. So unless the Bears can manufacture a pass rush out of nothing, Jared Goff's going to have a big game. Top 10 quarterback.
It'll be interesting to see. He doesn't have a lot of weapons. No more T.J. Hawkinson. Josh Reynolds may not play. Amon-Ra St. Brown hopefully will step up and play well. So it's a tough call to say you're starting Goff over some of those guys. But if it does work out, and you're brave enough to do so. We'll see how that goes there for him. In terms of Brandon Ayuk, so is it going to be an Ayuk game? Is it going to be a Debo game? Is it going to be a Kittle game? Who's the best bet for you?
I like Ayuk just because he's got 3 straight games with at least 15 PPR points. He seems to be on the same page with Jimmy Garoppolo.
One of those was without Debo, though.
One of those was without Debo. And the last time he caught a touchdown, who was it thrown from?
McCaffrey.
Yeah, but it's still good. I think Ayuk is involved in their game plan. 7 of the 9 touchdowns wide receivers have scored against LA have been from 10-plus yards out. Those are the kinds of touchdowns that Ayuk gets. I don't expect him to score when they're inside the 10, near the goal line. That's not his bag. I'm looking for maybe in the neighborhood of 7, 8 targets. You'd like a little bit more. 2 of his last 3 games, 11 targets. I think he's going to be down from that. 8 targets, still could get 4 or 5 catches, a couple of big plays, and a touchdown.
Give me the breakdown of the Bears running back situation here. So is it a Montgomery game? Is it a Herbert game? How are you approaching the Chicago back?
I originally had Herbert as a start because I like both of them, and obviously you can tell that I think it's going to be a high-scoring game between the Bears and the Lions, but Montgomery is where I'm going to land here as a start because he's been getting so much more work than Khalil Herbert, and we saw it last week. The production hasn't been there. I'm not buying that this Lions run defense is good just because they did a nice job against the Packers this week and against Raheem Mostert the week before. I think the Bears have a great offense going right now. Justin Fields is putting up some huge numbers. I think the run game starts to get going too. So Montgomery ahead of Herbert, but Khalil Herbert's the flex.
Hopefully you get back to getting production from Khalil Herbert. 2 of his 2 games prior to last week were fantastic. Last week, for whatever reason, they went away from him, but we'll see if they go back to him against Detroit.